Thanks so much for joining book club today. Don't forget to like and subscribe and get ready to hear from some doulas who know squat. All right. Needing a break from your responsibilities and from your baby versus avoiding your baby. And avoiding baby is actually something that I see in moms that don't have a very strong support system. When I'm coming in to do their perinatal, it's been a while since they've given birth, come in and they're, oh, thank goodness someone else to hold this baby. And then they don't want to hold the baby the rest of the time that I'm there. As I'm leaving, they'll put the baby in a swing and I'm not seeing them actually hold the baby. And that's a worrying sign and something that you have to be so gentle and careful approaching.
I had that.
Me too.
Very strongly. And I didn't realize I was doing it until someone pointed it out to me. And then the guilt after that. Oh gosh. Still very.
Yeah. It still sticks around. Have you experienced it?
Not so much with like maybe toddler cooking, but technically.
I am done. Someone else come hold this one. Somebody fed after midnight. What is that? Called birdies or something? They look like birdies, but they're called something else. Yeah, gremlins. Are they really called gremlins?
Yeah.
I was right. Cool. Anyway. Yes, toddlers that have been fed after midnight. Yeah, I actually didn't realize it until, because my mom actually comes and stays with us for a month after we give birth. So it was very easy for me to hand the baby off to somebody else. She was always there, always more than willing to hold the grandbaby, very happy to do so. And then she left, and I went to hand her the baby, and I couldn't. And the fact that I couldn't hand this baby off to somebody immediately started freaking me out. Where I was like, oh my gosh, I have to hold her, and I don't want to. I was why don't I want to? And it just like said, oh, I don't want to hold my baby. That's interesting. So
Mine was at my sister's wedding. And
in public.
I had been holding him, and then one of her friends, that she'd been friends with since high school, so I knew her well, came over and asked if she could hold him, and I was like, of course. Then I never went back and got him. I was busy with his older brother and sister. I was busy doing stuff at the wedding. It just didn't occur to me until someone came over and said, hey, we've had the baby for a long time. You might want to go get him. And I was like, it just didn't even, I was busy. I was doing things. I was coordinating his study. And it just didn't even cross my mind. And that was what I was looking for. It was a major guilt moment for me, but it was something that I brought up at that time when I went to my doctor. Not even a month later.
One of those first symptoms.
Or first time that I really noticed something's wrong. And other people noticed something's wrong. I don't think people who didn't know me knew, but my close family was like, this isn't. She's like,
Yeah. Yeah, and something that you could kind of explain away even. Just saying, well, I was busy. Had other children to look after.
Right.
I didn't leave all of my children.
I knew he was safe. He was okay.
2 out of 3.
My daughter was 2 at the time. She was the flower girl in the wedding. I was actively busy.
You had a gremlin flower girl. You were busy.
Keep her presentable in that pretty white dress was.
It was hard.
She was gorgeous.
Okay, yeah, no, like, too much was being asked of you, Do not feel, I mean, you shouldn't feel guilty about it anyway, but like an emphasis.
Shit, that. It's been 17 years now.
That's
the first one I've exposed to. And everybody else.
And public. Just post it online. Wanting to limit visitors' inactivity, and if you want to, do it. There's perfectly polite and kind ways to limit visitors' inactivity. Withdrawing from the world and becoming isolated. difference.
For me, I feel like there's another side of this because I know that for me, I tried so hard to be out and about and busy so that nobody knew anything was wrong. And it got to the point where I was like, never. When our children were never home. We were out somewhere all the time. Because if we were home, then we can put some. I do think that there's a little bit of there's two sides to this one.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. It could be one situation.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, yeah. For me, like with the limiting visitors versus like completely isolating, it's like if there's certain people that it's like, sure, I'm going to be taking a break from it during a time during like postpartum, not baby and all that, and I'm not going to be around that much for people. But if I was starting to like exclude my best friend,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If I've asked if I can come over a couple times, you've said no every time. I'm probably gonna show up.
it's the not responding to messages for like repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
Occasional messages is normal. Right, if you message me more than once and I haven't responded every time, then
We show up with the cavalry. Yeah. I have been kidnapped by you two before. I did not experience this. This is not a thing that I did. At no point did I want to limit visitors. My house has always been doors unlocked, come on in. Had 19 people at my first birth. Like at no point that I want, it didn't occur to me to even be a thing. And then my first, I went out and had lunch at a Mexican restaurant the same day I had a baby. We went and got lunch, wore a dress, and then I was like, oh no. I was like, we're going out for lunch, I'm gonna dress up. I can actually fit this again. And
Kristen's brain just flew out her head.
it done. And then we got there, and my daughter was like, food. And I was like, oh, right.
You want lunch too.
How does one do this? The answer is breastfeeding friendly dresses. This was not that. Stripped down in the car.
I've done that.
Yeah. And then with my second, I went and had a girls get together at the mall like 2 days after giving birth. And everyone was like, she's not going to show up. She just had a baby. And then I walked in and I had both kids and coffee. Just really social. And it wasn't a show. It was just, I'm just that social. I wanted everybody to hold my baby and see how cute he was. It's close to Christmas. See it Santa.
For me, I needed to stay out of my house because I didn't want people showing up. Didn't have the energy levels to get clean and to keep up with things. And so if I just stayed out of the house, no one could show up. That was a big part of that.
It just help keep the house clean if you're not in it.
You would think, but no.
No? That's my,
That was my method of keeping the house clean.
but still
This came to Kristen's house, so I'll just
I did.
Full avoidant.
Kristen was like, I'm not even helping with the baby like I said I would. And I'm like, well, we're not dirtying my house, so you're doing your job.
You had to keep leaving for work. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I was only here to help for a few hours today. And she would just be like, great. You're the one with all the dishes, toys everywhere. This is fantastic. Last one, occasional irritability and anger versus feelings of intense anger and irritability. Yeah. And sometimes it does get intense. I thankfully was born with a pretty intense temper. So I experienced a lot of that as a kid and developed coping mechanisms So when it got really intense in postpartum, because I had some anger, I was able to use those coping mechanisms. I've had clients and friends that had never experienced intense anger previous to giving birth, and they were very taken aback. You get to read some books on anger, listen to some audiobooks, develop some like, I'm not an angry person, but you might be when you're that tired.
Anger is a normal emotion.
It's a very normal
Sometimes
emotion.
you're going to feel it, and sometimes it might be really intense. And sometimes it might be directed at little bitty human.
Because the little bitty human's the reason you're not sleeping.
Exactly.
The cause of the anger.
And why you have to shower. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's very normal.
All right. Speaking of very normal, on page 49, I've underlined 50 to 80% of new mothers will at times feel sad, irritable, and occasionally anxious. And I would probably say that's closer to 100.
99.9.
Because it says at times feel sad, irritable, and occasionally anxious. And I think people, even not new moms, just people in general, will occasionally at times feel sad, irritable. Right.
We are all humans. We all feel things. It's okay.
Welcome to the world. The key with baby blues is that despite the tears and overwhelming feelings, you enjoy being a mother most of the time and feel sometimes. Baby blues. There's a chart on page 50. We are not going to go over it because we just did a nice large chart that goes over very similar things. But it is a great diagnostic tool. Do you have baby blues? Just asks you questions, you go through and check. I always say that these, like, and it goes over this, and this is not a diagnostic tool in that you're not supposed to take this and then diagnose yourself with baby blues. You're supposed to take this and realize what's going on and then take your answers to a healthcare professional. Because everything is so individualized. It's not good to have a book tell you.
Right. It's screening versus diagnostic.
Thank you. That's, yes. What I took 15 minutes to say. So postpartum depression, it goes over on page 51, some different stories. Always good to read stories and kind of see yourself in them or recognize if you're reading this while you're still pregnant. So this is something you could experience if you're a birth worker. Some good experiences to go over to read to kind of help recognize it in clients. Important to recognize that the highest risk period is within the first month after birth, but that doesn't mean that you can't develop it far past that, specifically for postpartum depression.
And I think that's a big thing for partners to know too.
Yes, look for that. And it can happen to partners too. Everybody who's in charge of the baby can experience any of these things. Postpartum depression can begin during pregnancy, in the first month postpartum, and during the first year of your baby's life, which it goes over on page 52. And it goes over a lot of symptoms. What to watch out for is pages and pages long. And going over kind of the overlap of anxiety and feeling guilt and avoidance, scary thoughts. I really love the book, Good Moms Have Scary. It's a fabulous book. I need to repurchase it because it's not that. Purchase it again, don't have it. Another screening on page 64, and then the degrees of postpartum depression. So I did want to kind of talk about the different degrees here. So the first one is mild. So PPD is not the same for every woman. Some women may have mild cases while others are more severely affected. Each of these is a real illness that needs attention, and here's what the different degrees look like. So there's mild, you do not fully enjoy being a mom or much else in your life these days, and you have some serious symptoms of depression, but you can still go through the motions to do what you need to do to take care of yourself and your baby. There's room for improvement, but you're getting by. Does that sound pretty familiar? There's moderate. You feel down all of the time and have trouble being a mom and connecting with your baby. You have symptoms of depression and are not at all your normal self. It is really hard to get through each day. And severe. Your mood is extremely depressed and you have most of the symptoms of depression. You're unable to look after your own needs and you just cannot attend to your baby. Different degrees. All of them are postpartum depression. Then it goes down to postpartum anxiety disorders. Some researchers believe that they are more common than postpartum depression. Is that surprising to anyone? Why?
I feel like it can be easier to hide the symptoms of anxiety than depression. It can be easier to be like, oh, this is like kind of shrugging off as
Being an attentive mother.
I'm just doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Who else would be asked them doing this constantly? Everyone else is doing this, obviously. I could do it. Or should be doing it.
Should be. Okay, so further down on page 67, it talks about GAD, which is moms that cannot be reassured and they can't turn off their worry despite knowing that they are worrying too much. I've seen this quite a bit. Moms they'll almost kind of dismiss their own worry where they're saying, I know that it's not, or I shouldn't be, or something along those lines. And you can feel them telling themselves that they're worrying too much, but it kind of doesn't matter. They're still worried.
Right. Sometimes you try to rationalize that when just realizing what's going on is a good thing. Instead of trying to rationalize, well, it's not that big of a deal. Well, it's just a little bit. I know I'm doing this. They will say, I'm doing this. No. Calling out the elephant in the room.
Yes. That can help with a lot of things. Making a note that about 4 to 8% of new moms are affected by GAD. And there's a chart. I love all these charts. It's so nice. Top of page 68. Do you have a generalized anxiety disorder? And check marks. Then it talks about panic disorder. Talking about, panic attacks, pounding heart, difficulty breathing, dizziness, vision changes, numb, tingling, sweating, feeling like you're going crazy or that you're going to die. And it gives some story examples, talks about how it affects about 1 to 2% of pregnant women, which it said is in this, and new moms. And then checks. So do you have it or not? Have any of you experienced a panic disorder or something similar?
Mine's been ongoing for years. So we have learned how to deal with it and learned how to function around. A lot of work.
Talking about OCD. My therapist says I have OCD-like tendencies, which I really like because it feels like
the state, not a trait.
Exactly. That's fun. I like that. I bet that's said pretty often. That's the first time I heard it. I like it. Page 70, you might have OCD if you're suffering from obsessions or if you have compulsions, which are repetitive behaviors or rituals that they do to make the obsessions go away or to feel less anxious about them. And you can definitely see people picking up compulsions, especially surrounding baby care. When it comes to this compulsion has to be done when I'm cleaning the baby or when I'm cleaning the materials that I use to take care of the baby. Very generally pretty specific to that I have seen, but not a medical professional. So it's just observations that I've made and experienced my own self. 2 to 3% of new moms have OCD. Do you have obsessive compulsive disorder? I kind of want to take this. Yes, I do. post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. I'm sure there's all kinds of postpartum disorders. The main symptoms of PTSD are having nightmares or flashbacks of a traumatic event. So you can see like traumatic events happening in pregnancy, especially if it was scary, you thought that you were going to lose your baby, or you were having multiples and lost one of them, the previous loss, difficult births, times that were scary after you gave birth. There's all kinds of different things that can start to become reoccurring. Sometimes that means that people can start avoid being with their babies because their babies are giving them a hard time that they have had. So if you're looking at inversion, sometimes it's not depression. Sometimes it's this kind of PTSD. Has anybody here experienced or been around, have advice for?
I feel like that's like, while postpartum depression is being more and more talked about, this is one that doesn't get talked about a lot. And it's really hard to find information about it.
Yeah, it's not even a full page.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that on a completely different note, I've been researching more and more. And it's hard to find anything about PTSD. You would think that at this point, where we know that it affects so many people in so many different ways, there would be more out about it, but it's hard to find. And it can affect you in some really interesting and crazy ways. Definitely recommend the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Yes, that's pretty amazing. My copy was kind of a check. I would show you. Postpartum mental health emergencies. So this one starts talking about things like suicidal thoughts, homicidal ideation, starts talking about, postpartum psychosis, which is called PPP. It's extremely rare. 1 or 2 out of every 1,000 new mothers. But it's basically when it's like an extreme of all of these postpartum disorders that we've been talking about, where instead of thinking about them, it's actually acting out, which can actually turn into actually hurting yourself or actually hurting your baby. So extremely rare, but extremely serious. So that starts on page 75 and goes into 76, which if you have any risks for that, I would definitely be aware of it. I've had people hire for postpartum doula services specifically because they have some risk factors for PPP, and they just want somebody to be around and watch. First 5 days is generally when it develops, so it can be pretty fast, but not necessarily just like overnight. Right. Like, it tends to not be you just wake up and suddenly there's signs, generally. Mania was one that I've read this book before, but I actually didn't really remember very much. It can be when someone's mood is euphoric and it may appear to be the life of the party, but actually her thoughts are racing, and it's called The Baby Pinks. It's kind of the opposite of baby blues, but just as hard, and it has its own set of challenges. I think it would be kind of interesting if somebody was going back and forth between the two. I always wonder that when I look at the extremes of like, what if somebody's experiencing both? Baby pinks when someone is around, baby blues not. I don't know. That's a question, not a statement. So that one is also pretty rare. More likely to have it if you have a strong history of a familial bipolar disorder or sleep deprivation, which I totally understand. Okay, that is the end of chapter 3. We will start with chapter 4 next week. All right, thanks guys.